Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and what's next. It's a show that asks questions and peels back the layers of our average everyday experience and goes beyond scratching the surface. We interview people doing incredible things who are making a difference around the globe. Join me as we listen in and get one step closer to understanding that big ideas shared create collaboration. Collaboration can inspire community, and communities create social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. So this week's interview is with a woman by the name of Smita Singh. I met her at a fundraiser recently called Restored, and she's working out of Kolkata, India. She's from the area, and she's been working with women, trafficked women, for many, many years. And it's a difficult interview at times, but she talks about things like gender disparity and poverty not being the only push factor with respect to things like human trafficking. And she talks about the disconnect and the relationship and the opportunity for restoration. I think you're not going to love this interview, but I think what you are going to do is you're going to fall in love with Smita. She's a terrific woman who is doing an incredible work. Check it out. Don't forget to also check out Real Change is Incremental. It's on the digital bookshelves now, and I just released a collected edition of some essays called Irreconcilable Differences with Dr. Jason Robinson. Check that out as well. We'll be in touch soon. I hope you enjoyed today's interview. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We are joined today by a very special guest who I'd like to say has come all the way from India for the interview, but that might be a little bit of a stretch. Her name is Smita Singh. Thanks for joining us today, Smita.
Thank you so much, David, for having me here tonight.
I met you just a few nights ago. Actually, I was sitting in the back row at a fundraiser that you were speaking at, so we didn't actually meet. I guess we kind of theatrically met, Smita, okay. I suppose you could say.
Well, that's nice. You saw me.
Exactly. And you were speaking a little bit about the work that you were doing, and I was so compelled, I called the president of the organization, and I wanted to chat with you a little bit more about the work you do. You do very challenging work. So Smita works in human trafficking. She is involved with an organization in India called Mahima. She's going to tell us a little bit more about that, I think, in the next few minutes while we chat. Smita, tell me a little bit about, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you, and I think my listeners would enjoy that as well as we go into what is really a very difficult issue and clearly one of the pressing issues of our time, it seems to me, this whole idea of human trafficking and slavery and so on. It's very complex, as you said on Saturday night, and very difficult to work through. There are no easy solutions, it seems. But I'm kind of interested to know a little bit more about who you are and where you're from and why you chose to take this issue on.
Right, David, I am from Kolkata, India. I've lived there all my life. That is home for me. And growing up in a society where there is a lot of injustice all around me all the time, but my family, my church, the people I associate with have always been just people who wanted to reach out and not just look away when we see things. So my training has been as a psychologist, and I work with people with addictions. And that's what I did for a very long time until I just felt that there was more that I could do for people around me. And I happened to get into a job with an organization called International Justice Mission. Mm-hmm. So even at that point, not really knowing what exactly it would mean until I really went for a rescue operation to bring out some young girls who were supposedly coming to be sold in a hotel for a sex party. And waiting at the hotel with the police for these people to bring the children, I was really shocked to see, because I've lived in Calcutta, I've seen women in prostitution, but just to see that how young these girls were, and more than that, just to see how family members were bringing these children to a hotel room, knowing full well that they were going to receive money for some men to have sex with their daughters. And this was for the first time for them. So when they were, the police walked in and the arrests were made, and this family was asked, the father was asked to come and identify one of the girls and say, which one is your daughter? He holds all this money in his hand, which is wrapped up in newspaper as the police have handed it to him. And he stands there and he says, but no, none of these girls is my daughter. And this child who's 14, sitting beside me on that hotel bed and just crying, saying that is my father. I don't know why he's saying he doesn't know me, because he told me he was taking me for an outing.
Wow.
So I think that was just...
yeah, you're sending a shiver up my spine. I mean, I hear a story like that, Smita, and there's a part of me, and I work in, as my listeners know, I work in this field of international development and social change and justice. There's a part of me that doesn't want to believe your story.
I know, it's very hard. It was difficult for me. It was a shock for me, even though I live in that society. But just to see that, and it happens so often. But again, there are many situations. I mean, maybe 70% of the time, it's not parents like this. It's
right.
Parents who let their children go for jobs or feel that they're getting a good marriage for their child because this man is not asking for a dowry. He's not asking for money, but not knowing where their children end up. So it works both ways, but this is the reality. I mean, kids as young as 10 and 12 and 13 are being abused every single day in my city. And it's hard to find them because people go to huge lengths to keep them hidden because they make so much money for them.
Yeah.
So when the rescues happen, they're mad. They want to get these girls back.
Yeah, I've heard very similar stories from Cambodia where young women have been rescued, young girls have been rescued, taken to homes and so on, and very difficult, very challenging, and then a few days later the police end up at the door and basically, as a result of corruption and bribery and so on, will take them out and bring them back to the to the brothels and so on.
Correct.
It's such a systemic issue, it seems. I've got so many questions for you, Smita, but you used the phrase. I think you used the phrase. I grew up in a family of people who reached out to others.
Yes.
So I'm always interested to know what is it that drives somebody who gets into this kind of work. Because I think, on some level, Smita, I think you're a crazy nut. Like I think there's a part of you that's absolutely nuts to be doing the work you're doing, but I love it and I'm inspired by it and compelled by it. And I think anyone who gets into this field is working on a different level. I hate to say the phrase they're wired differently because it's got a deterministic edge to it. But you clearly made a choice. And so did it come from your friends? Was it your upbringing? Was it your church? Was it your overall ethic? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And to be very clear, when I got into this, it wasn't me. I just think that it was a decision that God called me to do it. I did it for 3 years, and I was ready to quit, believe me, because like you said, I felt that it was ridiculous that I was doing this work. We were rescuing all these girls and putting them into homes that did not have facilities. Girls were running away, running back to the brothels. They were just in a mess because almost 80% of the girls we were rescuing were getting re-trafficked.
Oh, is that
and
right?
I was like, Lord, this is not something that I can take anymore because it's hard getting them out and then seeing them back. But I think I've never had experiences where God has spoken to me more clearly than he did in 2008. And he did, and it's just that, something from the scripture that came to me. And when I opened it, I didn't listen to him for some time because I didn't want to look at what he was trying to tell me. But when I did and opened the scripture to the verse that he had for me, which was from Joshua 6:22, and I'm not a big Old Testament person. I didn't know all the verses there, and it gave me shivers because that day I opened it and it just says that it's Joshua telling the spies that go into the house of the prostitute and bring her and her family out as you have promised to her. And I was at a juncture where I was looking for another job, and I didn't want to do this, but that was where God wants me to be, and I'm just obedient to his call. And since then, I've seen just this huge change because 2009 onwards, we got partners who wanted to do aftercare homes in Calcutta, Christ-centered aftercare homes, and now Mahima is 5 years old. So this was not my doing. God had a plan in that, and that is where I am today.
So would you be like an accountant if you weren't a person of faith?
No, I was always a person of faith.
Oh, okay.
But I was a psychologist, and I was working with people with addictions.
Yeah.
And so that is, again, another area that I just felt at that time of my life is what God wanted me to do. And
But that's still a position of sort of reaching out, right? That's still a position
yes,
of helping
yes.
others. And I
So
guess
it's
I'm
just,
always fascinated by people who go into this field who want to help others build capacity.
because that's what Christ teaches me to do, David.
Yeah.
That's what He teaches me, that is what He did, and that is what makes me who I am. My identity is in Him, and I want to be. It's always a journey. I want to be more like Him. But it's a big task that I try in whatever way I can to,
So what did you learn as a psychologist that has helped you with the work that you've been doing, working with the young women, with the men, and so on?
Yeah, first of all, I think just the training and discipline to work with children who've been traumatized.
Right.
It's so hard to hear their stories and not be affected by it.
Yeah, I would imagine.
But to be able to distance myself a bit so that I am able to help them out with that. So that has been huge for me. And then, of course, just knowing, how to structure the program, how to make it more efficient. Most of the programs in Calcutta don't have that structure. They're not professional. They don't have a plan for the girls. There are no treatment plans where girls are a part of it. Assessments are not done. Because just the whole idea of having people take these girls through in a thought-out manner, in a planned manner, planning for their reintegration from the day they enter. It may happen 5 years down the line, but just we are looking at ways in which to take the girls back into the community. So that takes a lot of planning and just professional training and thinking on getting how to get that done. So I guess my background as a psychologist has really, really helped me in doing that. And I'm not a great administrator, so I'm glad that I have found, and I just think God has led these fantastic people on my team who kind of complement the areas where I am not so strong and have helped me in develop the program and sustain it and just building it up in 5 years. It's been a huge growth. We started with one home for 25 girls because that's how we felt we wanted to move away from what the norm is in Calcutta, and that is huge, large warehouses of girls. So you have 120 or 50 girls staying in one place and maybe 10 or 15 staff, to look after them. So to move away from that model to have smaller homes, have more staff to care for these girls because they have so many issues that come out at every point of time during the day. They need someone to kind of de-escalate at all the time and to talk and help them to, look at their stuff.
So this goes way beyond just a intervention. This goes way beyond just rescuing these young women. This has to do with reintegration and restoration and building relationships over the long term.
Right. Yes, it does. And that is why the challenge is that we don't just take them in for like the emergency hospital. This is like specialized care, long-term care for them. And that takes them through from emotional healing, through all the counseling and trauma-focused care, to education, their health, their vocational training, job skills readiness, getting them into internships and trainings outside the home, finding jobs for them, helping them to stay in the job and save up some money for some time before they're really required to move out of the home.
It really is incredible and important work. I'm astounded that there's. I think I read a stat recently that slavery is a more complicated and difficult problem and a worse, more extreme problem today than it was, in the time of slavery.
Right.
When we refer to the William Wallaces of the world and so on, and there's about 30 million people in a form of bondage or slavery of one kind or another.
Yeah.
What's going on here? I mean, it's a crazy question, I know, but how is it that you can get to a point where a father can disown his daughter in such a vulnerable, horrific, and tragic situation? Forget about the issue with the police officer. What about bringing her there in the first place? I mean, how does a person get to a place like that?
These are certain families, David, that we have in India that are generationally, they've been in prostitution. So it's the whole community of people who are from the Agra region where the Taj Mahal is, and we think that's the symbol of love. And these people come from that area, and traditionally that's what they do. Their daughters are groomed from a young age. They know that this is what my aunts have done. This is what my family people have done over time. And it's just so deeply ingrained in them that they don't even think it's wrong. They just believe, because their parents are the ones who live with them in the brothel. Their parents are the ones who take the money for them. So it's like a whole family inside the brothel area. And these girls have lived with us sometimes for 2 years even, gone through the motions of the program. But once they're released when they're 18, they go right back to these families and right back to the brothel, and we lose contact with them.
Wow.
So in fact, of the 132 girls we've cared for in Mahima home in the last 5 years, 9 we are not in touch with, and they are all from this particular community. So if I'm talking about re-trafficking rates, which used to be 80%, it's less than 10% at Mahima. But even these are just from that single one community.
From the one community.
Yes.
So it's not, I heard somebody recently, and I've certainly heard it many times from different people along the way. Stephen Lewis is a former UNICEF director here in Canada. He's written a book called Race Against Time, and he thinks that, equality, gender disparity, women's empowerment, this is the issue of our time. And if we could get that sorted out, we can sort out a lot of other problems. So in relation to the work that you're doing, this is not just a problem of demand, is it? Like the men and the purchasers, I'm sure there's women as well, but mostly men, I would imagine, buying the sex. This is also a systemic issue with culture and
absolutely.
And it's astounding to me that a community has been doing this for so many years. It's just become a part of who they are.
Yeah, that is what they are. That is one community. But the rest of it, the other children who are getting trafficked, it's like you said, it's a complex situation of many issues. Poverty is not the issue. Just poor people don't sell their children. But it is, again, the gender disparity, the discrimination between boys and girls, just believing that girls are more dispensable, just believing that, the boy is going to stay in the house and look after me in my old age. My daughter, I have to get her married. I have to make expenses.
Right.
So if she can go out and, earn some money and bring it back, it's good for me, not knowing where she's going. So apart from that, even I think just in our society, it's just been from generations, for years, it's just been so acceptable that prostitution is okay. So the kings and queens had it, the mythology kind of refers to it. So it's just come down the ages, and to change that, it's going to take a very, very long time. But we are now at a place where we feel that it's not just stopping the supply by, just by rescuing the girls is not going to help. We need to stop the supply. We need to educate the families from where they're coming, the villages, the rural areas, and educate the families of how to keep their children safe. But on the other hand, we also believe that we need to address these issues on gender discrimination, on respect for women, on not for thinking that paying for sex is not okay with the young boys in schools and colleges. So that's where we are moving on in the next few years, is addressing this, trying to change it through the boys in grade 9, 10, 11, 12, and in college.
There's an organization here in Toronto that I believe is worldwide called the White Ribbon Campaign, and you're probably familiar with their work, but essentially it's men working with boys and trying to restore their own sense of brokenness with respect, I suppose, to their sisters and their mothers and their girlfriends and so on, and trying to fight what seems to be this cultural sort of discrimination that seems to be everywhere. It's a global issue, it seems to me. It's just worse in some places, I suppose, than others. But the point is that they're working with boys. They're working with men to try to change their understanding and their attitudes, and it's about respect, and it's about relationship and so on. Is that kind of work also going on in Kolkata?
It's not going on. So we want to start that this year. We're doing a small pilot to just see how that will work, and my hope is that over the next 3 years to be able to reach a large number of young boys in the schools and colleges, because these are the guys who can get, if they get a hold of it, they can be excited about it. The college students have been very vocal and have been very aggressive in the ways they've come out in support of a lot of, episodes of assault against women that have happened in the last year or so. So they are ready to, take this up as a cause and to start the discussion going, because even they realize that this is not going right for them. So I'm hoping that this will take off and we will be able to come back and give you some update on how things are.
So no, it is encouraging, and I think the work I've been doing in Cambodia for so many years now, for about 12 years, seeing some of the changes, seeing some of the conversations, and listening to what's going on, and even in the media, seeing that things that are being talked about today weren't being talked about 10 years ago. So these kinds of things bring me hope. So Smita, are you hopeful? I usually save that question to the end of my interviews, especially when I'm talking to somebody who does such difficult, challenging work. Are you hopeful? Are things changing? Are things getting better?
Things have in the last few years. Our courts are getting more proof conviction. The law enforcement is more active. They are doing so many more rescues right now. I'm just so hopeful when I see my girls leave the home, just live independent lives, in jobs, just emotionally healed, coming to know the Lord, being able to forgive themselves, being able to move on in their lives, in marriages, having families. It's just so much of joy that I see in their lives, and just feel so encouraged every day, because just that change that I've been able to be a small part of that transformation that God has brought in their lives. It's a huge encouragement for me. And I believe going forward on these prevention programs, I believe it might not happen in my lifetime, but if I can get it started and people start talking about it 10, 15, 20, 50 years from now, I'm hopeful that there will not be demands for young girls or women at all in the sex trade.
Right. Where do the local authorities sit with this? I mean, from the West, seeing what we get to see about the more horrific, I guess, the rapes that we've read about, the more controversial cases. There was a documentary recently made that caused quite a bit of controversy. That's what we hear about. What's happening at would you say, at a civil level, and then what's happening at a government level? Are you, as Mahima, are you individually getting support from the people that you feel you need to be supported by?
Yes. With regard to law enforcement and courts, we find that there has been a huge change in the last 3 or 4 years. At the civil level, more and more people are getting just outraged about what is going on, because it has just shot up. I mean, it's incredible. Either it's just being reported more right now, but it's so much in the news every single day that there's so much abuse happening against women that there is a sense of that something is very wrong with our society right now. But again, it's a small group. It's not everybody. So everyone is just so busy in getting on with their lives that they'll look at the news, oh yeah, another child has been raped, and put the newspaper down. That's just news for them. But there is a growing group of young people, a lot of nonprofits, a lot of people who are in theater, in movies, and just who are writers, and they're just feeling that this is going very wrong and something needs to be done about that. So I'm very hopeful that people will be coming together to address this and to make sure that our society becomes much more safer for children and women.
You said something earlier about, often I've heard, I'm actually emceeing an event coming up in June, the Alliance Against Modern Slavery. Carly Sapoznek here in Toronto has been running an event for about 3 or 4 years, and she's the director of this organization, and so kind of familiar with some of the work that you do and so on. And I have heard some argue that poverty is definitely connected to trafficking and the sex trade and so on, but you said poor people don't sell their children.
No.
And I think you're absolutely right. Is it greed? Is it a disregard for human life? Is it just gender? Is it gender disparity at a higher level? I mean,
all mixed together, David, because poverty is one of the push factors which allows parents to let their children go. But it's not only poverty. So the lack of education, lack of awareness, the gender discrimination, the just feeling that, okay, it's okay to let my girl go because if she's one less mouth for me to feed because I have so many kids. It's sometimes also the society, difference in the community which they belong to. Some communities, they have higher disregard for, their girls. I mean, they don't care because they have so many. Some other, like I'm telling you, in these last 10 years, I have rescued maybe over 600 girls of being involved in the rescue somewhere. So only one girl I have found who was Christian.
Wow.
And that makes me think that maybe the church is doing a good job of either protecting their children, because, I mean, maximum churches will have very poor people who are as part of their congregation, but they are not selling their kids. Or I'm not sure whether the men are going to the brothels or not. That's another study for us to do.
Right.
But it just tells me that there is a sense that your children are valued in the church. So if the church can do that in a small way, and I don't see, except for one girl, any Christians being trafficked, so why can't we use that platform to share with people that, this is what Jesus teaches us about respecting women. This is how he dealt with women, and he respected the women with him at equal par with everybody else. And use that to reach people who are just think that they're just so dispensable.
One of the things that's often frustrated me, Smita, and it's partially my personality, it's partially that I'm a philosopher sort of academically, and I like to ask questions, is that it seems to me in most subcultures, whether it's the Rotary Club or the church or a corporate environment, people are not, for the most part, open. They're not transparent. They hold things back. They're not willing to talk about things like sex and religion and politics and death, the things that I think matter the most, these issues that are fundamental to who we are as humans. What is Indian culture like in that sense? I mean, my guess is it's probably
the same.
Fairly repressed. Would you say it's repressed?
Yes, it is, because, I mean, on one hand, they have such a huge market for sex.
Yes.
But on the other hand, when we try to put in sex education, we're teaching the children, what it is about being safe, the government doesn't allow us to do that.
Which is
like we can't talk about these things.
It's so ironic, isn't it?
Exactly.
I mean, yeah. It's just tragically ironic.
Yeah. So we were trying, in fact, at one point of time to include that as part of the sex education for kids in schools. And we were like, no, who's going to take these sessions? I mean, the teachers will not do it. We can't have it there. It's going to giving too much information to the children. But if they're not informed about things, how do they make good choices for themselves? So that's how it works. But slowly I find that at least the churches now are beginning to talk about issues like human trafficking. They are beginning to talk when, there are issues like big rape cases that happen. We had a very controversial case 2 years ago when a young lady who was out with her friends in the evening, and she met some people and they offered her a lift, and she left with them and she got raped. And our chief minister at that point of time, she's a woman, and she had said that, what was she doing in a nightclub? I mean, she deserves that.
Right.
So this is
as if she was
not just the men.
She was being held responsible for that.
Yes, and they still are. Every time that happens, if you've seen that documentary, India's Daughter, that's what these guys who are going to be hanged because of what they did, they still think that, she should not have resisted.
I saw one of the clips, Smita, and it's deeply disturbing. The one man who basically is showing no remorse whatsoever,
nothing,
and he's gonna basically go to the gallows. This was still her fault. It's not my fault.
So that's how it is. But then slowly they are beginning to have these discussions in church and talk about it and have people come and speak to the congregation.
Yeah.
And that. So I think that's a good sign.
Smita, what do you do to recharge? How do you smile? How do you sleep at night?
Yes, the thing is that when I walk into the homes, David, it's such a good place to be in when I walk in every day. And that is my recharge battery. It's like that plug says go in and they get recharged, because these children, you would think that of all the stuff that they've experienced, that they would not smile, they would not laugh, they would not. But it is just so different. And they have bad days where they're in conflict or they're upset or they're angry or something has triggered something in them. But overall, these girls are so resilient. I mean, I cannot imagine even having gone through a little bit of what they have and still be functional. But they are.
So we kind of come back to that whole notion of hope. So and hope and resilience, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. I think it speaks to the
to the strength of the human spirit, to the strength of children. I have a 7 and a 9-year-old, and I'm yes, they're very sensitive and so on, but they're also very resilient, and
Right.
and they are, they're amazed by wonder and the mystery of the world around them and relationships and so on, and I continue to be amazed by them and how they react and how they respond. So you believe in the healing that is happening, and you're seeing it happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do, and that is so encouraging and rewarding for me to see that.
Of course. I mean, talk about recharging your batteries, capital R. It's amazing. So what's the future for you? Is it to grow the work that you're doing in these homes? Is it to become more of an advocate at a government level, would you say, global level?
Both of that. Global, I'm not so sure, but locally.
Well, you're in Toronto. You're in Canada speaking.
I guess I am.
And I want to talk about that in a second, about the organization briefly that you're with, Partners International. But so I would say you're pretty global already.
For me, right now, the 3 homes we have, I think that's at where we are at max to take care of that, because it is expensive, David, to run these aftercare facilities at the quality of care that we do provide.
I bet.
So to be good stewards of the resources we receive, I think this is a good place to be in. And we will be focusing, like I said, to reach maybe, thousands of people, boys and girls and families in the next maybe 5 years, so that to see in a larger way, to go wider. Like with this, it is more deep, going deep into the lives of these girls to bring change, but going wider and addressing more people and reaching more people and getting the message across that it's not right to sell your children or let your children go. You need to keep them safe and respect women. So that is my agenda right now. And maybe at the local level, we do have some networks that are kind of working against the issue. There are people who want to legalize the whole system of prostitution in India. It is legal for adults, but they just want some more changes in that, and we are trying to oppose that. So getting all that in place and, working with the governments to smoothen out the repatriation process to Bangladesh and Nepal and being part of those discussions, that is also part of my role right now. So, it's good. And globally, well, if I can do my little bit in reaching people, I'm happy to do that. And I've been coming here now for the last 5 years.
Oh, okay, good.
When I came in 2011, most places I would speak at and talk about human trafficking was, it doesn't happen in Canada.
Right.
But now I'm hearing so much that there are networks, there are people working for these girls. It's definitely a big part of where Canada is leading. I mean, there's a lot of trafficking, prostitution going here. And even yesterday I was encouraged to hear that someone I met 2 years ago is now involved in trying to set up a safe house in the Newmarket area. So I remember that when we had discussions, and I said, I'm happy, I shared all my protocols with her, and I'm just so encouraged to see that is actually happening.
It's amazing.
Yes.
I mean, you really do, and I think myself, it's hard to celebrate sometimes and to say, well, some of the work we are doing is having an impact and making changes, and that's an amazing story. And it sounds like you are able to do that, which is really wonderful. Tell me a little bit. Partners International is an organization that works with a lot of different partners around the world doing all kinds of work, and you're here promoting a campaign they're working on right now. Is it called Restored?
Yes. So Partners International, actually, when I was working and looking for a partner to set up a home like this, nobody was interested in doing this, in 2008 and 6 and 7. And finally, in 2009, Partners International partners with my parent organization, which is called JKPS for the last 35 years, and they were the only one who came forward saying, okay, if this is a need in Calcutta, we will stand by you and we will support you and work with this. And they have just been this huge rock of support for the last 5 years and will continue to do so. And I just feel so blessed to have found partners like this who allow me to do what I do best and just walk with me in the vision that we have for our city. And just being with us, guiding us, helping us, but never kind of directing us that you need to do this and you need to do it this way or that way. They just encourage us as national leaders to take what we know best and take that forward.
Right.
And they're always there to support us in that. So it's been a great relationship, and I just love the people here in the office.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Well, Smita, thank you so much for joining me today. What a delight chatting to you, and I'm encouraged and also kind of horrified, I suppose, at the same time about what's going on in the world. And it's always a good reminder to me that there is more to be done, but there's lots of things to be celebrated as well. And sounds like you're doing incredible work. So let's Smita Singh, folks from Mahima, India, and that's MAHIMAINDIA.org. We'll put a link on the website at partnersinternational.ca. Check them out. They're an organization doing great work around the globe. Again, thanks so much for joining me today, Smita. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, David. I enjoyed talking with you.